The story of Deborah and Barak, a miracle of great victory. According to Judges, chapters 4 and 5. In ancient times, when the 12 tribes of Israel had no king, they lived in a cycle of obedience and disobedience. When they followed the ways of the Lord, they were blessed. But when they turned away from the right path and worshipped false gods, the Lord would allow their enemies to oppress them as punishment. During this era, God raised up leaders known as judges. These judges were not only dispensers of justice, but also military leaders and spiritual guides. Among them was a unique figure, the only female judge in the entire Old Testament, a prophetess named Deborah. Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, was a woman of profound wisdom and faith. She would sit under a palm tree, known as the Palm of Deborah, between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. There, the people of Israel would come to her to have their disputes settled. Her reputation for fairness, discernment, and deep connection to God was known throughout the land. Her word was respected by all the tribes. At that time, the Israelites had once again done evil in the eyes of the Lord. They had embraced idolatry and forgotten their Creator. Consequently, the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, a powerful Canaanite king who ruled in Hazor. The commander of Jabin's army was a ruthless general named Sisera, who lived in Harosheth-Haggim. Sisera commanded a formidable force, boasting 900 iron chariots, the ultimate weapon of warfare in that era. For 20 long years, he cruelly oppressed the Israelites. His armies would destroy their fields, plunder their harvests, kill their young men, and enslave their women and children. The people of Israel were utterly terrified of Sisera and his iron chariots. They had been brought so low that they were stripped of any means of defense. Sisera had even ordered all the blacksmiths in the land to be killed, so the Israelites could not make swords or spears. The people hid in their homes, in mountain caves, and behind rocks, living in constant fear and misery. Their condition was desperate. Finally, the people of Israel could bear it no longer. They felt deep remorse for their wickedness. They cried out to the Lord for help and repented of their sins. And the Lord, in his infinite mercy, heard their groaning and decided to deliver them. One day, as Deborah was sitting under her palm tree, the word of the Lord came to her. God commanded her to send for a man named Barak, son of Abinoam from Kedesh, in the territory of Naphtali. Deborah immediately sent a messenger to summon Barak. When he stood before her, she delivered the Lord's message. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Go, lead 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." It was a clear and direct command. The Lord himself was promising victory to Barak and his forces, but Barak was an ordinary man. He had heard the terrifying stories of Sisera's 900 iron chariots. He knew he had no trained army, no proper weapons, and no chariots of his own. His heart trembled with fear. His faith in the promise wavered. He replied to Deborah, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go." Barak's response revealed his fear and lack of confidence. He felt that if a prophetess like Deborah was by his side, perhaps God's presence would be more assured. Deborah listened to him. She understood the weakness of his faith. She agreed but gave him a sobering prophecy. "Certainly I will go with you, but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." With that, Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kedesh. There, Barak summoned men from the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, and with Deborah's presence and God's word inspiring them, 10,000 men rallied to his call. They were not soldiers but farmers and shepherds, armed with whatever tools they had, hammers, axes, and makeshift spears. They followed Barak and marched up to the summit of Mount Tabor, a strategic location that overlooked the vast plain of Jezreel. Meanwhile, when Sisera was told that the Israelites had gathered in rebellion on Mount Tabor, he was amused and contemptuous. Confident in his superior military technology, He called up all his 900 iron chariots and all his troops from Harosheth-Haggim, and marched them toward the Kishon River. He was certain he would crush this ragtag band of rebels beneath the wheels of his chariots. As Barak and his 10,000 men saw from the mountain the distant cloud of dust kicked up by Sisera's approaching army, their courage began to falter. The sight of the dreaded chariots filled them with terror once again. They looked to Deborah for strength. Deborah, who had been in prayer, received a word from the Lord. She stood up and said to Barak, "Go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" With this divine assurance, she gave Barak the order to attack. Barak and his 10,000 men charged down the slopes of Mount Tabor and rushed toward the Canaanite army. And then, the miracle the Lord had promised began to unfold. The Lord intervened from heaven. Suddenly the sky grew dark with thick, heavy clouds. Thunder rumbled and a torrential downpour began. This was no ordinary rain. It was a violent supernatural storm. The Kishon River, which was usually a dry wadi, swiftly swelled into a raging torrent. The plain of Jezreel, perfect for chariot warfare moments before, turned into a vast sea of mud. The heavy iron chariots of the Canaanites sank deep into the mire. Their wheels stuck fast. The horses panicked, slipping and rearing, causing chaos as the chariots crashed into one another. Sisera's entire mighty army was thrown into disarray and confusion, trapped and immobilized by the very mud that was meant to give them advantage. For Barak and his light infantry, this was a golden opportunity. Unencumbered by heavy chariots, they could move swiftly across the muddy terrain. With a mighty shout, they fell upon the helpless Canaanite army. The Lord strengthened their arms, and they fought with divinely inspired power, striking down the enemy with their crude weapons. Sisera's great army was completely routed. Seeing his forces being decimated, Sisera abandoned his prized chariot, leaped down, and fled on foot into the surrounding hills. Barak pursued the fleeing army, relentlessly searching for Sisera himself. He remembered the Lord's promise, but he also remembered Deborah's prophecy that a woman would claim the victory over the general. He chased Sisera all the way to his camp at Harosheth-Haggim, but the general had already fled from there. Meanwhile, Sisera, exhausted and terrified, ran for his life. He knew Barak would be hunting him and needed a place to hide. He came upon the tent of Heber the Kenite. The Kenites were generally at peace with the Israelites, but Heber had allied himself with King Jabin. Sisera believed this would be a safe haven for him. As he approached the tent, he was met by Heber's wife, Yael. Heber was not home at the time. Yael recognized the famous general immediately. She knew of the great battle that had taken place and understood that this man was fleeing from his defeat. With cunning courage, she called out to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." Sisera entered her tent, relieved. He said to her, "I'm thirsty. Please give me some water." Instead, Yael opened a skin of milk, a more nourishing and comforting drink, gave him some to drink, and covered him with a rug. "Stand at the entrance to the tent," Sisera instructed her. "If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone in there?' say no." Yael agreed. Overwhelmed by fatigue, milk, and a false sense of security, Sisera fell into a deep, heavy sleep. Yael stood there, watching the man who had oppressed her people for 20 years. She knew that if he escaped, he would regroup and bring more suffering upon Israel. A bold plan formed in her mind, guided by a faith that recognized the hand of God in the day's events. Quietly, she went to a corner of the tent and picked up a tent peg and a hammer. These were the tools of her nomadic life, used to secure tents to the ground. The peg was long and sharp, the hammer heavy. She crept softly back to where Sisera lay sleeping. She placed the point of the peg against his temple, raised the hammer, and with a single mighty blow, she drove the peg through his skull and into the ground below. Sisera, the terror of Israel, died instantly, slain by the hand of a woman. Shortly after, Barak came by in his pursuit of Sisera. Yael went out to meet him and said, "Come, I will show you the man you are looking for." Barak entered the tent and saw Sisera lying dead, with the tent peg through his temple. The Lord's promise, delivered through Deborah, had been fulfilled exactly. The honor of defeating the enemy commander had indeed gone to a woman. Barak felt the shame of his earlier doubt, but he also felt overwhelming gratitude to God for the victory. With Sisera's death, the power of King Jabin was broken. The Israelites grew stronger and stronger until they eventually destroyed him completely, finally free from 2 decades of cruel oppression. After this great victory, the prophetess Deborah and Barak son of Abinoam sang a song of praise to the Lord, which is recorded in Judges chapter 5. This song, known as the Song of Deborah, is a magnificent hymn of praise. It celebrates the Lord's miraculous intervention when the stars fought from heaven and the river Kishon swept the enemy away. It praises the tribes who bravely answered the call to battle and shames those who stayed safely behind in their homes. It reserves special, triumphant praise for Yael, most blessed of women, for her courageous act. Through her song, Deborah reminded Israel that the victory was not won by their own strength or weapons, but by the mighty hand of the Lord. She declared, "Hear this, you kings, listen, you rulers. I will sing to the Lord. I will praise the Lord, the God of Israel, in song." The song concludes with a picture of the peace and security that return to the land after the victory. "So may all your enemies perish, Lord. But may all who love you be like the sun, when it rises in its strength." And the land had peace for 40 years. Deborah spent the rest of her days leading and judging Israel. She is remembered forever as an ideal leader, a prophetess, and a warrior who, through her unshakable faith in God, delivered her nation from slavery. The story of Deborah and Barak is a powerful testament to faith, courage, and reliance on God. It teaches us that the Lord is always faithful to his promises, no matter how impossible the circumstances may seem. It also reminds us that God can use anyone to accomplish his purposes, whether a respected leader like Deborah, a hesitant warrior like Barak, or an unlikely heroine like Yael. The only requirement is a heart of faith and a willingness to obey.